slide that down?
They could get me in any smaller of a. I think. It's a little tight. We do.
We only do them during regular board meetings. But we have somebody? It's up to you. Regular board.
Yeah.
Doing well. How you doing? I'm doing well, sir. How you doing? It's good to see you.
Do we look?
But I thought, so what? Well, you can take for the board. That was
Couldn't be an issue. Are you behind there? Just wave at me if I'm.
But change. Good evening. It is 5:30, so we want to get started with our special board meeting. Before we begin, are there any public comments?
You can go ahead. Step up to.
So and I was just coming to confirm we always have complaints.
Thank you, Dr. McGee.
On our Facebook page about the school traffic and it is a hindrance. Okay.
Thank
you. Any other comment? This time, a roll call of members. Here.
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 Present.
Here. Awesome. We have two items on the agenda. The first one is 3.1, informational item, Amboy Elementary School traffic pattern community update.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. So I invite my colleagues up to the presentation, which will include Mr. Allen Pennington, our proud principal of Amboy Elementary School, and he's also going to be presenting along with Mr. Sandy Williams and Mr. Hatch. Mr. Williams, our safety and security, and Mr. Hatch, our supervisor of maintenance, to bring the community and the Board of Education an update as it relates to some traffic concerns and a community update. So I will turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Paluski. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the President and Mrs. Temple and our rest of the board and stakeholders and colleagues in the room. Thank you all for this opportunity to present to you all. I'm going to say it's never easy to present to the board, but hey, I'll stand firmly on it. But thank you for this opportunity. I won't be before you long. I just want to bring to you some traffic patterns and concerns that have been going on at Amboy Elementary School for years, and I really want to try to solicit your support with concern. If I don't get this right, you bear with me. All right, the purpose is to bring awareness to the North Little Rock School District's Board of Education and the Amboy community regarding traffic patterns concerns at Amboy Elementary. Before I move forward, thank you to Mr. Williams and Mr. Hatch to help present these concerns. If you notice, the image that was provided is green line shows the traffic patterns at, I'm gonna have to look this way. This is the route that parents uses MacArthur Drive to Auburn Street to the school for student drop-off pickup. Traffic crosses Military Drive during dismissal, usually lasts 10 to 15 minutes. Just kind of an image. Images from McDonald's parking lot, how it extends. If you've ever been to Amboy, you'll know kind of how long that path. See that the traffic is beginning to cars in the dismissal lines are Drive, which enters Valero gas station. I go too fast. You notice the cars in Drive. In addition, McDonald's employees shared how this has caused several accidents on maybe a week. Over or something. Well, this is the path that parents take. Kind of want to give you an idea of cars to Auburn Drive, cars Auburn neighbors' property. This has been some concerns over the years that have gone even to 7 on your side to try to solicit support from neighbors and everything. More images. Car loop Auburn. If you notice, there's a silver car going through what we'll discuss here in a minute. We call the wedge, but that particular vacant property. Notice they use that as a pathway to get to the school as well. The cars going through in front of the school. Just another image I've shared. Red arrows cover the section of area that cars, homeowners exit their property between 2:20 and p.m. Of course, we have frustrated neighbors during that time. Just some images to show you Auburn Drive with no traffic. Traffic allows neighbors to exit and enter their property freely. And Auburn Drive during dismissal does not allow neighbors. Potential solution. This is the one way that leads in front of the school and possible gate exit. Cars are currently looping through the parking. The loop. Possible potential solution, excuse me, you all. Move car rider drop that park, but there are some issues with that. Front park driveway being able to carry the weight of the school buses, which has been shared with me as pathway to rear parking, that's front parking. They have to drive through neighborhoods. Pre-K student pick typically in front of the school. Those are solutions, but also may cause some. We could either open the gate for allowing, also employ control the flow of traffic. That cars would drive through the loop, exit. All right. Hopefully that's better. Cars would drive through the loop and then they would exit through the open gate. All right. Crossing guard will stand onto MacArthur with the stop sign direct exiting traffic onto MacArthur. I particularly said to the right, but I'm sure if they have a stop halt the traffic, probably to the left. To the right may give them more because it'll take them off their path, take them off their path. So they can potentially probably have them go to the left. Amboy community update. There's a vacant property next to the school that I spoke of earlier in regards to that parents kind of use as a pathway to get into that car loop. That tends to cause some problems as well. Just some images of that. Stakeholder concerns, the increase of traffic if a potential business occupies the property. I'm sure the property will be blocked off flow of traffic that's going through it now, which would then send that traffic back onto MacArthur to go through the loop. Concerns of noise from cars and machinery once the business is opened. When they're doing their work, the machines change the tires and all of that, which would cause a distraction of the learning environment to the classes most closely near the potential business. Pre-K, our pre-K and kindergarten classes are up front. You know, that's our foundation of any learning. So, you know, I'm really concerned about those distractions. Potential solution. The availability of the property for sale near the school, and I provided an image of the phone number and the company that has it listed for sale. Creating a parking lot or a roundabout. That was an idea that Mr. Williams did share with me. Give cars an alternative to parking and or lining up for school dismissal, and then decrease blocking neighbors' property and local businesses. Also an increase for safety for all stakeholders. Again, my name is Alan Pennington. I'm the principal of Amboy, and those are just some concerns. And again, I thank you, Mr. Sandy Williams and Mr. Hale Hatch, for being present during this presentation. Thank you all.
And Mr. Hatch, is there anything that you and Mr. Williams would like to share? Because I know that Mr. Williams had gone out to do a safety study, and I know that you've been out there, sir, as well. Maybe to give the board your perspective as well before take some.
Put a couple of barrels across the return drive loop, funneled everybody onto MacArthur Drive. That's what that gate was intended for in the first place, was take the pickup and drop off cars, put them directly onto MacArthur. We can get some signage states during certain hours, pick up, drop off, must make it right. I don't think that's going to be a big inconvenience because not 100 feet up the road, there's a left turn switchback, take them back into town very easy. So short term, we can do those almost immediately, and it wouldn't require any city ordinances or anything like that because the signage and our traffic would be on our.
I have a question about that. So 365 is this
Yes,
right in there.
You have to get approval from the state.
When we do the training off our
what are you asking? What are our responsibilities like the
What-
board to do?
I took a look at the property on Google Map before I came to the board, and looks like we bought that property out front. There would actually be enough drive lane that has switch and go into the loop, because look at maps, we're still going to be spilling a lot of traffic out on Arthur that may even go down to the stop. So if we can build a switchback property, then funnel them to the drive loop, Arthur, that's what I'm envisioning, buying that property and doing that. Of course, you know, this is city engineers' involvement. This is state traffic control problem with putting a switch, but that would become our property and all the switchback would be on our.
Oh, well, have you all pursued at any point as value of property? You know,
Not myself.
We have not. Williams, we wanted to first just bring this as been out to the community with Mr. Payne, person West, and we thought it was first best to inform the board. If the board wishes to pursue that as an opportunity, we'll come back, do all of our homework, do the research to see what availability of cost, and then speak with Mr. Beckett. What would be the legal ramifications or steps required?
Include Greenback, what is, or cross guard. So,
Madam Chair. So, homework, coming here, and they're asking $95,000 as is for that lot, right? There is an offer on the table. It is a tire shop. Community is opposing that. That's putting the details out. It is zoned for C4, which has a lot of details in it. And in order for us to make some design recommendations and choices, we will have to get, like Patch said, state for an immediate answer that has been years, like you said, years of an issue. We need to open that gate up, and we need to release the flow. It's a bottleneck right there. I have picked up children from Amboy before, frustrated as a parent. I've been stuck close to McDonald's 20 minutes. But flip side, we have this issue in every elementary. All of our elementaries are in communities within our neighborhood. Where I live, we have issues. People parking in the grass. They've broken my sprinkler system. They've blocked my driveway. They've dang near taken my child out for making an illegal left turn. They almost killed my child. She's lucky. But with that being said, we have these issues everywhere. It's not just, but the immediate solution, open the gate, that will help release the bottleneck, and then we need to come back inside. But before we even decide this, the city unity will have to decide if they're going to go against our.
Well, let me say something real quick. As far as the parish just table, and it hasn't been voted on as far as the city council right now, that item was not on the agenda this week. Been trying to trail it and follow it pretty close as it relates to when it's going to be on the agenda. But even a step further, as far as even past traffic, you know, I look at it from a standpoint safety issue as far as do you want people that you really don't know about that close to school? Like, it could potentially be a problem. I mean, even if a child wanders off, somebody lures them over there, you just never know. So, and especially a tire shop, with the boys population, I do feel as though it would be more detrimental than, you know, I guess, help community.
I do, I understand that. As it sits right now, it's .56, and it offers 18 parking spots. It's assessed and paid taxes at $57,400, and they're asking $95,000. So going forward, that's just some of the homework I've already done.
Then I do know that he brought the property forth, trying to basically double his profit.
On that, realized that when we had properties and they signed out the prices of, well, you know,
I think they kind of
the
already.
parking lot at across our arena, they wanted $1 million. So that called it. Higher. But I am block. I just block. And is there a way, Amboy, oh, you have to go up this little road, you have to turn around, and is there a way I gotta get up rather than going down an alley to get to the school? While you're looking at that.
That's all there is right now. Usually to get to the backside of Boy, I will cut Boy because somebody took one of the wheel chalks off parking lot of traffic flow for every. Honestly, you have to go down to what, third? Go back.
Problem is
58.
move in. And drop off. Too big. Wait, don't want to see it. I get it. Get all the right thing, but no one look at building it, building there, go to 18 parks. Huge hole.
So with that being said, no one has mentioned like a permanent crosswalk. Do we need a permanent crosswalk? We put one over at the middle school, which is amazing, has light, awesome. Thank you, North Little Rock City, for that. So with that being said, will we have a permanent structure for a crosswalk too?
Here's the difference with the crosswalk.
Uh-huh.
So what?
Mm-hmm.
The amount of feet. Position
Mhm.
The process.
So yes, we can work on those short-term solutions and begin to start implementing that now. The will of wants us more information on that property. We will do that and then bring that back for further discussion.
Oh, go on.
Okay, so I get that opening the gate expedite traffic. Is it that traffic is unable to leave the lot is really the backup, or is it just the picking up of the kids?
Here's the
Right.
into the.
Okay.
Now you gotta turn around in the park.
Okay.
Creates a automatic. People stop.
Mhm.
We got. Control this. Okay. Everyone who goes back, have to back where they
Right.
cannot exit the other way.
Right, you have to loop
One-way
back
street.
around. Right. But we still have the issue, if there are 100 cars lining up there every day, where those 100 cars are still going to be lining up there every day for 45 minutes. Even if we acquire this property, there's nowhere for those cars to go for that time every afternoon. Is there a solution for that? I mean, like Ms. Wonga said, every neighborhood deals with this every day at pickup. But it does concern me if it's backing up to MacArthur or to Military Drive. That's a major issue. People are going to be inconvenienced to some degree, but do we have a solution to handle that daily queue of cars?
We believe that when Mr. Pennington dismissed, he had a good team that worked. We believe that if we open the gate, put at least that's going to speed up. The car, parents get their in for the parking lot. Got extremely careful not to run into where the gate is and wait on traffic. Airline things. Fans moving like we're doing.
My last question, I promise. Is there a reason that gate's been closed?
Here's what I learned. Here's what the research. It's literally, I hate to tell you, literally what. They need a key for if there's, but they don't control where the gate. I recommended that we open the gate. Because we created so many problems on traffic. Remember that some unidentified? Is it somebody?
Just somebody.
Can we fire that somebody?
That's it.
Let's
Thank
get
you.
rid of that.
So we can open the gate.
Therefore,
Madam President.
I would entertain a motion.
Madam President,
Mr.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Pennington, have you met with the owners of the property across the street?
No, I have not.
Okay. Yeah, we've communicated with them, and they seem like they're very willing to help with any situation. I don't think there will be a situation where the price will magically go up, but they're in the community. They're part of the community. So, Ms. West, others probably will know them, but they're very willing. They're very willing to help. So I think that's a good situation. And all schools are like that except for 7th Street. We don't have that problem because we're fortunate to share a parking area with the church there. So not all schools have that problem.
But I would entertain a motion that we give Dr. Ploufsky the leeway to go ahead and implement the quick fixes and bring back to the next workshop the information that we would need for a possible purchase of the property.
I think we can provide that guidance, but since it's informational, I don't think we can do it in motion, so.
Correct, because
Yeah.
it's only information
So
item. If we
I'm-
come
I'm
back
good
as an
with that.
action item.
That's a good question, but I didn't get that answer that JT asked about the highway department, because they're very strict, especially on MacArthur. What was that, your response? I mean, anything that you do, you
Anything
have
that-
to go through that.
Yeah, anything that you do that own a highway department property, that road, anything you do on that road, you gotta go through all that protocol.
Okay.
If you do it on your property, then you're not
That's
following
fine,
your
so we'll do that first.
That's exactly
Okay.
right.
And I just want to make mention real quick that the hours proposed for the tire shop will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which we know would further run into drop-off. And not to mention, if there's a program at the school, when school open back up normally, there will, I mean, that's going to pose a potential even worse issue.
And I think that one of the things also, and I spoke with one of the representatives about that if it's a zone 4, that they can actually leave cars overnight out in front of the school, and that's gonna be a problem.
So we will be happy to implement some immediate next steps right away based on this discussion, and then based upon the board's willingness, we will do our due diligence. We'll gather all the information. We'll be in contact with that property, gather all that, bring that back to the board, and see what the board wishes to do as it relates to acquiring that property. Sounds like
Would the next workshop be too soon?
we will try to get as much information as we can. If we can do that by next week, we'll certainly do that. And if not, I would probably suggest we maybe have a special meeting just on this topic, if that's the will of the board.
Okay. Oh, thank the president
Yes.
of the community for coming out.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Amboy Association, Michelle Holt is our Amboy Association president. And we also have Miss Nita Glover here, Sims, and she's from our neighborhood also.
I did have two things, if I can say. I talked to Danny Dillon today from the traffic department because he's been painting crosswalks for us. I asked about putting the crosswalk down at the school because I've read that kids have tried to cross. And he did say that since it's the highway department and it would cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And since we have a crosswalk at the intersection of Military and MacArthur, that the highway department probably would not do it. Also, there is an ambulance station, back when you come up Auburn and then go to turn. It sits right back here. So if that traffic is there, the ambulance cannot get out.
Understood.
That's at Auburn and Military, or Auburn and MacArthur?
It's beside the old fire station.
Okay.
Where the Amboy food pantry is now.
Okay, okay.
It's tucked back in there.
Any more discussion? Well, we do have one action item on there.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Pennington, Mr.
Thank you,
Williams, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Hatch.
Hatch. We will be in touch.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Fred.
The action item is 4.1, Virtual Learning Academy. Dr. Palousky.
Yes, Madam President, Dr. Keith McGee, our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Brooke Reynolds are going to present on our Virtual Learning 2.0 program, in which this is an action item, so we're going to be seeking your approval to continue this evening, or continue with a virtual learning program. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues. And
thank you, Superintendent Palousky, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to come tonight to present to the board and ask for an approval for the Virtual Learning 2.0. So we're going to get right into it. The purpose of this is to provide the board an update on the Virtual Learning 2.0 and also to outline selected models and schedule and protocols for the 2.0, and to also provide some information pertaining to the technology support and the training of the virtual learning program. So I'm going to come and talk about two different options. Model one, option one, is that we will continue to implement the current model of the virtual learning program, but also with some more revisions. We want to make sure that it become more synchronous, more teacher and student meetings, and then also add a little asynchronous piece to it, where it's a daily schedule, and Dr. Reynolds is going to come and show you that here in just a minute. Students will attend, again, the live meetings, just be electronic. They'll follow a schedule. Also looking at some teachers, and also we'll continue to use Google Classroom, but more specifically, we want to try to improve the curriculum that we're going to use. Option 2 that we have here, board members, is that outsource the virtual learning program, better known as the digital learning program, using an approved digital providers list by DESE, the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. Some of that you see here that'll be K-12, which has their own teachers. They have their own curriculum. Some examples of this: Edmonton, Virtual Arkansas, and K-12 Strive Solutions. So if we do outsource that, we have to use the DESE approved provider list. We cannot go outside of that list because we're a public school district. Dr. Reynolds?
Certainly. So our committee met, and we've kind of put together what would be a separate sample elementary schedule. And some of the feedback we've received is students being on the computer all day and a lot of screen time. So you can see here where we have some teacher-led instruction in the blue, and then some more where students would have some independent work. It would also push their recess to the end of the day, so their day would end a little bit sooner than instead of taking a break in the middle. They do have a little bit of a break, but their recess would be at the end of the day, so they would get to finish a little earlier. And you can also see specials, which would be their music, art, PE, those kind of classes. Those would be a little bit more of independent work, so they would be scheduled at that time, but they have a little bit more flexibility of when that independent specials would occur.
And let me add to this, board members, the minutes are just sample here, but we will make sure that the minutes are equal in terms of our instructional minutes. We don't want to, this is just a kind of example. We may have missed off on the minutes, but we make sure that it is equivalent to make sure we provide the enough instruction minutes that so the students can be able to grow, or our little scholars can continue to learn.
Secondary is a little bit different because, again, based on some feedback with older students, didn't want to sit on the computers all day and have a little bit more flexibility since they're older. Some of them may prefer to work in evenings rather than morning, those types of things. So, again, like Dr. McGee said, the core classes would be very synchronous, online meeting with the teachers, kind of a sample schedule at the top, having your core classes. And where the asynchronous piece would come in more would be more with the electives. They would meet with the teachers, get some things, and they may not have to sit for a full class period and do those kind of things more in the afternoon. Because if you see down in the middle, after their lunch, they may have some of the electives and those kind of things. We've also built in Friday as an asynchronous for students. That way they can meet with academic advisors, discuss how their grades are, their attendance, and it would give them some time to also meet for remediation or catch up on some work and just kind of like what we've been doing on Fridays, but with a lot more structure put into place for the students on Fridays.
And part of our application program plan that we have to submit before April the 30th has to have a support piece in the application that tells us how we're going to support the students in their needs, their academic needs. So with secondary, this is already built in that Friday will be that one of the support pieces there. And for elementary, we still build that in during a regular day. And
so, but based on what we've done this year, we know there needs to be a little bit of an enrollment criteria, so some suggestions. The student would need to be strong with their technology, communication, and time management skills because this is a little bit more of an independent learning environment. We would ask that they maintain a C average, and that's for grades 4 through 11, just enrollment because our K-3 students do the standards-based learning. So ability to be able to turn your work in on time, work independently, and then consistently engage in class, so be able to show up for your class meetings, and that's a K-12. Maintain regular attendance. We've had some issues with students not showing up for virtual classes, so if you want to be a virtual learner, we want to make sure you have that a good attendance. And in the red, that's straight from our student handbook, what's considered excessive is 12 per semester. And to kind of, again, what Dr. McGee mentioned about that support factor, If we notice that a student has below a C average, more than 6 absences, we're going to go ahead and initiate that parent conference to get those things when that happens. And then at the end of each 9 weeks, we would like to review grades, and if a student has below a C or missing more than those 6 classes at the end of the 9 weeks, we may recommend that they go ahead and return and go back in the building for learning, because that may not be the best solution.
And we do have a criteria form that parents can use to measure to see if this virtual learning option, the digital learning option, is the best for their child. If it is, they want to go into this option, they will have to sign the form and to commit to it. Again, with the understanding that if their child are not fully engaged like we want them to, and also that we're going to follow the policy in terms of the absence. If they don't turn a camera on, that's going to be considered absence, then we have the flexibility that we return back to on-site. So we do want to make sure, I wanted to put that out there, we do have the form, and we do apologize, board. We should have put a copy of the application, the criteria form inside here, but we'll be glad to send it to you in a weekly board report so that you can see those forms.
Okay. Kind of expectations of teachers. Based on people filled out an interest survey for us, which was also part of the requirements for our application to the state. We kind of base these numbers off of that. If we use that option 1, we would need a K-5 teacher, 1 per each grade. That way, they have a dedicated virtual teacher. Teachers aren't trying to teach in class and all that. So we're 1 for each grade level. We would need 2 core teachers for grades 6 through 8, and then we would use that adjunct, kind of the elective teachers as needed. For 9 through 12, we would need 4 core teachers, 1 for math, science, reading, and English. And then again, we would use the elective type situation as needed, depending on what the interest of the students and those types of things. Again, a full-time counselor would be needed just because of the scheduling. It would take it off of the buildings and stay with the virtual piece, just have a counselor. We could hire art, music, and PE just to serve grades K through 12 because those teachers are certified to teach grades K through 12, so they could handle all of that. And we probably would need some kind of a support administrative staff, kind of what Buster Staggers has set up with a technology help desk, someone to help with device and inventory repair, and then just teacher support as well, helping them create lessons and work in a virtual environment.
And I would say, board members and Superintendent Paluski, I've been in constant contact with DESE, Ms. Deborah Kaufman, who's the accountability. She's been, and they understand that the data, the enrollment data, will have to drive our decision. And if we have to make changes to our application, they understand that. But what they want us to do is just to please submit the application, and then we can continue to modify those changes as needed.
So kind of what our expectations were for students: attend the live meetings as scheduled, turn in work as assigned, check your grades and attendance weekly in preparation with your academic advisor. So when they meet with their academic advisor, they should have their weekly up-to-date grades so they have something to speak about and how their attendances have been. The NWEA assessment, which is the periodic assessment we use for grades 3 through 10, may all be taken at home. Otherwise, all of our summative exams, so our ELPA, our DLM, our ACT, the ACT Aspire summative, students would have to come on campus as they're having to do this year, and that's based on the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. We have no say in that. They're saying we have to be on campus to take those summative exams. Our technology, again, teachers will be provided with a laptop that has a camera attached to it, so they're able to hold those meetings. Students will be required to check out a school-issued Chromebook. The reason why we ask that is there's ways for us to give the assessments better. Now, if they want to have a second device of their own, that's absolutely fine, but they will have to have one for taking those assessments that they're taking at home. They'll have to use a school-issued Chromebook. North Little Rock School District will be responsible for all technology equipment for teachers and students. And as we're doing now, hotspots will be provided to students if they need those. And if you see down in the bottom, we are looking for a place possibly, if we do use option 1 and do this ourselves, a place to house all their teachers in one location. That way, collaboration, working well, and be able to have more of a unified group working together, working with our virtual students. Right here is our support. Mr. Staggers created the flow chart there talking about what the technology support would be. Again, we would need a dedicated team to help parents, students, and teachers for device and inventory, support teachers as they create the digital content, and provide that help desk for parents and students when a technology emergency comes up that they need some help with immediately while they're at home. Moving into training, this year would look a lot different than last year because of our ability. Obviously, we're here at being able to meet together, and it would be really nice if we could have parents come in to see us physically before school starts so we can help them get the devices set up. We can explain the parent contract that Dr. McGee mentioned and get that signed, explain our content management system a little bit better so the parents have just as much of an understanding, and then the students go ahead and signed into their Google Classrooms and ready to go for that first day. During the summer, what we would need to do with the teachers is really have some intensive Google training with them to make sure they feel like they're experts and understand it completely. Work with them on video content and creation and how to edit their own instructional videos, how to integrate an iPad into your teaching, and it may be, if it goes over the PD days, we may have to offer some paid days to get this up and going for the teachers to do some extra work in the summer. The waivers, these are just waivers that we use in our buildings already, but we would have to ask for these waivers through the state, and that's kind of depends on student attendance, meaning they're not attending physically. The instruction day, even though it's not a 6-hour all the time because there's an asynchronous piece, and that also is the clock hours. It may be some different times. Recess would not be a supervised activity. It'd be on their own at home. The class size may differ depending on if it may be a little bit over or under, and then the teaching load, again, the waivers to have over the teaching load if needed. But those are the things that we have to get approval for from you all to go into the plan for our state.
And the waivers are automatic embedded in the application. So regardless if we use the waivers or not, they will be in the application.
This is just kind of the chart that the number of students that were forecasted based on just the interest survey. Now, this is not, no one's made a commitment, no one's done anything like that, but just some forecasted. And so you see there, I like the numbers because it's manageable for me. It'd be a nice group, and it also allows us some room to grow. I tell you, still on a daily basis, I've received phone calls. I've got an emergency. Can my students switch over to virtual? We've got, an illness that they don't want to be at school, or whatever the reason, every day. And that gives us some of that leeway to say, yes, we're able to support you and help you in that way. And then the secondary, of course, we have quite a few more students interested in secondary. Again, that's why I said, kind of the numbers I gave you on the number of teachers we may need if we use our own staff, and let you know and how it's built in. And I think those numbers probably would be there or more, because our secondary students seem to enjoy it. Those that are in it, that want to do it, some of them are really thriving in that environment. Next steps, again, we presented to the community stakeholders. I had a meeting with parents on April 12th for those that might be interested. Our date is slightly off. On April 15th, we were supposed to present a little bit earlier, so that's what that date is. By May 1st, we have to submit our plan with board approval. And then once we get board approval, we can start kind of assembling the staff depending on what we're going to do, get registration open for students to say yes and commit to it so we know our numbers and what option we want to choose. Then go ahead in the summer and conduct that virtual training. And then before school starts August, go ahead and have that student-parent orientation and get them ready for the next school year.
And also, board members, if we have to go with option 2, we will need to look at researching which digital learning provider that we need to use. We would begin to research that immediately. Again, I would think that we need to let the data drive our decision making because of it's just best, and it's also going to be cost efficient for the district. It may be a little bit more expensive to pay for each student to go and we outsource it, but it allows us to free up the human capital that we can use inside the buildings. So I want to make sure we provide all the information to you. What we're asking tonight is the flexibility to be able to go ahead and upload the application, then be able to amend it based off the data that DESE has graciously understand that they need to drive our decision making. And so with that, I'm sorry, Superintendent, I'll come right back. So the timeline that once you approve tonight, then we will look at begin immediately preparing to research those different K-12 providers so that we can decide what's going to be our best option after we get the students enrolled in the virtual Learning Program 2.0 for next year. And then we will conduct some more training regardless if we outsource it or if we continue to do the option 1 or option 2. We still going to have to conduct PD for all of our, Dr. Reynolds would make sure that the PD, if option 2 would come and working with our parents and our students so they can understand that provider. We want to make sure we provide that support. And then lastly, we will look at doing an orientation sometime in August. Questions? I'm sorry, Sue.
No, I just wanted to add, probably one of the things that I heard in the learning and listening tour is that for some students and for some families, this is a great option. I think now that the pandemic has put us here, I think as we have to compete with other school districts and with choice, this is a great opportunity to continue. I see us expanding this over time, and that's simply what we're asking for this evening is to allow us the option to offer families a 100% virtual program next year.
And I will say a little more clarity on that option.
I'm sorry?
Can you, while you're talking on that, can you provide us a little more clarity on the options?
Sure.
So we're not improving. You said 2 options. So what would we be voting on tonight?
So what we'd be voting on tonight is the option to offer a 100% virtual instruction program for students next year.
And then we'll look at which way.
Correct. Correct. And as Dr. McGee alluded to, as we keep looking at our enrollment numbers, that has to drive. If we did an in-house option, that's a lot of resources that we would have to allocate for a small number of students. With the option of more of a turnkey, those are all Arkansas certified teachers. We get the allocation to that. It's kind of a one-stop shop. Everything's kind of built for us. We do have ESSER 2 funds that we would pursue that would be the funding source if we chose to go in that option, which is meant for the learning loss component.
Any other questions?
I have other questions, but let me yield to you, because mine is more on the subject matter. I'm certainly for this, absolutely. I know we have to do it. My concerns are this really needs to be an enhancement to our education in our school district and not something that is going to further widen the achievement gap. And let me explain that. We still have a lot of students that do not have access. So as we are here talking about choices, there are some students that don't have choices. They don't have internet at home. We're focusing on expanding bandwidth, but some of them don't have access to that. So where for some students you can say, what's the best option? Some of our students have no option. I am really glad that you did go and look at providing some support to these parents. Dr. Reynolds, I really appreciate that, because we just simply physically could not do that last time because we could not come together. But if a child is in virtual learning and the parent does not have the capability to access what the child is doing, then the child is basically on their own with no oversight at home, no supervision, other than what they're getting from the teacher online. So that's an issue. I really would like, when we provide those opportunities for parents, to make sure that we're making it accessible and we're keeping track of the parents that actually come to that. And I know there's a major issue, and there's going to be a major issue with Ridge Road because you have language issues there at Ridge Road. It's going to be major. And then just my last thing is the state requires that every student have a certain amount of physical activity during the day, and I don't know if there's a waiver to that. I know there was a waiver to that because of COVID, but now that we're seeing kind of the other side of COVID, will we be able to have that requirement waived, or
yes,
is that going to be a part of education?
So thank you, Mr. Steele, for those comments and that concern. I think you make some valid point. Let me start with the parent support. We're going to always do our best to provide that support to parents, as well as from the technology ends in terms of what they can have to achieve to be successful if they were decide to choose this option, and that includes from their own Chromebook to a hotspot. But then we also want to provide the support to the student and to the parents in making sure that they can be successful in the virtual learning program. We don't want to just throw them out there. We want to provide their own ongoing support and training and PD and how they can be able to get that support if they are unsuccessful or if they have concerns. So we want to make sure, we want to improve in the technology support flow chart. You see that would start from the school site if we go with option 1. Option 2, if we decide to go option 2 and outsource it, then we will work with that provider and making sure that we have a support. And then either way it go, we're going to involve our parental involvement coordinator from the district level, Ms. Crystal Barker, along with Dr. Reynolds, to collaborate that where we can have ongoing professional development with the parents and the students throughout the year. And we can begin to schedule those ongoing PD nights. One of the things that are very thriving thus far and is Ms. Crystal Barker Parent University Nights. We've been having them, and that's been very successful, and we want to continue to use this as a time to be able to train our parents and students.
I've got a number of questions. Okay, there we go. I've got a number of questions, but I'm going to pare them down just so I can get a better idea of how this is all going to work. So when you say 100% virtual, this year a lot of the kids that were in virtual were still able to participate in electives at the high school, whether that be stagecraft or band, and some of them were required to come in to do those electives. And I understand there's a bit of a conflict there, but you know, it is what it is. Are we still going to allow those types of things? Will a kid that chooses virtual be able to be involved in band and theater and some of the things that are the really good things that we offer?
Yes, we have to do that. We cannot deny them their right based off of this. If the students elect to go to the virtual option and they would decide to choose an elective such as band or ROTC, that is something that they're saying. I would make sure I provide another clarification from the state as well, but that is a concern that they did express. We got to provide them the option to be able to come and participate in those curricular activities.
Okay, so that's where I get to the hybrid elective terminology. Maybe I missed it, but what does that mean to you when you say hybrid elective?
Well, thank you for asking that question. It's just the elective, when we talk about hybrid, meaning you do have some meeting with a teacher virtually, say if you're art, you know, not the band and football and all those type of things, but you may meet with your teacher in a virtual environment, but then the majority of your work may be independent. So as far as that synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, the electives talking about those things that way. I think what you're asking about, and the way I think that we kind of made a line as far as what you come to school for are the AAA sponsored activities,
okay,
which is the band. There are some of the drama classes that are AAA, the ROTC, the athletics. Those were the ones that the students would actually come on campus and participate in.
And the hybrid would be just like, remember we was going to use hybrid model as an opening for last year, and where it would be some face-to-face and some virtual. That's what that would be. The hybrid would be that option for these electives that kids need to come on site to work that out with some flexibility.
So if the in-school kids, that the face-to-face kids are on a 5-day week, and the virtual kids are on a 4-day week, how will that scheduling work out for electives? Have you considered that?
That is a part of why we're considering option. I mean, we're having multiple options. There's some things that we just got to let that be one that just drive the decision, because it will be a scheduling. We understand it may provide some scheduling concerns. I would tell you that Superintendent and I have met with the principals last Friday.
Yes.
They have voiced their concerns about that K-12 in terms of the scheduling of the on-site of the virtual students. So we understand. So we're just going to continue to gather feedback. We asked the principals to go back to their buildings to visit with their teachers to get feedback, and we're going to meet with them again this Friday, and we're going to continue to meet with them on Fridays to get their feedback, and then we'll look at the data, then make the decision on which the best option.
Okay, yeah, they obviously know the logistics a lot better than I do, so as long as they're engaged, fully, I would appreciate that, just to make sure that's happening.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we do it the right way and get feedback. The way we're doing the feedback, we want to be strategic and go through the building principal. We ask each building principal get feedback from their teachers and to bring it back to our meetings on Friday so that we can make the decision.
As I know, one of the things that we heard from principals certainly is keeping in mind about teacher burnout and about how difficult it is to teach face-to-face and virtual. We heard that loud and clear. And I also appreciate your comment, Mr. Zakreski, about the ability to offer after-school programs, things like that. That we'll have to clarify that for our public. We also want to make sure that if you sign up for virtual learning, you're tied to that individual school. So if I choose Crestwood Elementary School, I'm tied to that school's data. I'm still much involved, a part of that community. Is just how we're delivering it. But let's make sure that we clarify the after-school activities or the elective pieces. I think I was a little...
We'll make sure we get that clarification from the state, but I will tell you from my conversation through the state at the beginning of this year, if a child has the right to be able to participate in some of the extracurricular activities such as band, ROTC, then we gotta make that accommodations for the child. So, and that is something that we're just gonna have to work out the logistics on that and how we go forward from there.
Thank you.
Do you have any more? Ms. Wonka?
Oh, okay, I have 3 questions. What I have a question that I'm asking you, I approve of the program that you're doing, but I would like for you to give considerations to bring the answers back, you know, just to improve the student. The first question that I have is, what is the expectation of a virtual student that are continuing to stay? Are they required to stay the whole semester? Once again, and the reason I'm asking is, Dr. Reynolds, everybody in here realize they go a week for virtual, and they get tired, they want to go back to face-to-face.
Right.
So what I'm saying to you, I would like to see that particular policy implemented in it. We need to say, if you're in here, because there's no continuity in it, and it affects the teacher who's trying to teach face-to-face, where that other child on virtual parent has decided, well, it's time for them to go back to school. So I certainly would like to see you do that, okay?
I agree.
Then the next thing, missing 12 days. Our policy has always been 6. Why are you giving people so many days in one semester? I know you got your hand up, Dr. McGee, but since you've been a virtual person, I know you know, why are we getting 12 days and you trying to get an education here?
Well, what we would like to do is, like I said in the presentation, after 6, that's when we need to have discussion. But the reason why we said that enrollment criteria, the reason why we put that 12 days in there for as an enrollment, like we're saying, if you missed 12 days the previous semester, virtual may not be right for you this year. So if you've missed more than 12 days in a previous semester, that's kind of what our handbook says is excessive, then maybe you shouldn't be a virtual student. And that's kind of a recommendation. But if you're already in virtual and you've missed 6 days, we're going to have that discussion and say, you may need to go on back in the building, or what is your plan, or what can we do to help you be more successful since you've already missed those 6 days. Does that help?
Yeah, I want to see why you excusing 12 days.
Well, let me clarify, Madam President, members of the board. The 12 days is our policy, board. We cannot go against our policy. It's 12 days. Now, what we're doing, if a child misses 3 days or 6 days, we're going to start to hold the conversation so that we can find out what's going on with Lil Keith. Lil Keith is not participating, not at school. So then after 12 days or before 12 days, we want to address that this may not be the best option for Lil Keith by holding parent conferences. So in the plan thus far, what we shared tonight is to address, to try to stop the attendance before it get out of hand.
Okay.
That's the goal, is to address the attendance before it get to 12 days.
Oh, Dr. Reynolds, back to you. Help me to understand why you would give 30 minutes prior to school and only 30 minutes in math, and they flunking math. And I would like to see that. What I'm saying, I would like to see more minutes on math
Okay?
rather than 30 minutes. You know, you give them 30 minutes in the morning, but 30 minutes for math. You know how the schools that are under the sea,
Right.
if you could address that, okay?
I think,
then-
are we talking about the sample schedule that we've provided?
Uh-huh.
That's just an example. Like Dr. McGee mentioned earlier, we would make sure that each of the subject
Correct.
areas are meted out exactly, and that we would give that same attention to math as we would in the ELA subjects,
And
yes.
you'll have that conversation. Okay, and I thought that, help me to understand why we assigned, at the beginning, you've done an excellent job on your report, right?
Thank you.
I guess what I'm not understanding is some of the timelines, and I would like to see more time spent on academics beside all the recesses, because you give the face-to-face 90 minutes and you only give the virtual 45 minutes on one of those sheets I got here, okay?
Okay.
And so if you could explain that when you come back, because I know it's due May 1st. And one other thing that got me, and I would like for you to explain to me, coming back, will you have a total projection when you come back to us in June? I know it's too early, but will you have a kind of like a total projection of how our enrollment will be looking next year?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to, as soon as the approval happens tonight, I'm going to work with Mr. Stone over at Student Services to add that enrollment piece in there for students to go ahead and say, yes, I'd like to go ahead and do virtual. So that way when we meet again, we can give you a number of what our forecasted enrollment would be.
And you mentioned these counselors on this page, computer, art, music, PE. I know we have the academics and virtual. Now, are these positions or something that have to be hired again, having them for virtual and having them for face-to-face? So is this a whole different salaries here for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions? I'll let you talk if she wants you.
No, we're going to use our human capital if we go with option 1.
Correct.
We will use our current human capital. We will not be hiring no new teachers. We will not give no special salary. We're going to fall with the
From
state
within the existing staffing.
That's
that
correct.
we would have,
That's
for
correct.
option 1.
Yes, if we use option 1.
Okay, I just wanted to say that there is equity in the virtual as well as the face-to-face. And that's why I was asking Dr. Reynolds about it. Look just like your mama. Okay. That is all I have to ask. And if you have those answers for us after we vote on it tonight, but some clarity needs to be made.
And I think once we get the enrollment numbers and kind of get some ideas of which option we're able to go with, then we can definitely give you some answers.
We will. We will be back.
And let me, before Ms. Wacom comes, let me make sure I clarify. Option 2, if we go with option 2 with a provider, that provider they will have their own teachers, the own curriculum. The only thing Dr.
platform.
Reynolds would do would be manage and work with the students and the parents in getting them to that provider.
Okay, so follow up with that. So if hypothetically go down that rabbit hole, we use hybrid number 2, and we're using an outside source. What's the cost difference between that and using our own human capital?
That's a very good point, very good. We would need to look at that. That's why we would need to research the providers to see how much it will cost per child, and then we can be able to bring that back to you when we have more projection numbers.
Because it's looking like 248 kids right now is what we're estimating. So 248 kids, but what is the cost of this virtual program? And I ask because I know Conway has decided, no, we ain't doing a virtual. It ain't worth it. We're not doing the headache. They took it off the table and said, no, thank you. So I'm possibly looking at maybe the children coming from Conway area, possibly. But I would like more flexibility within the virtual schedule, because I'm thinking of the Simone Biles that we may be having right here in our own North Little Rock School District. I'm thinking of the Cliff Lees right here within our school districts. So I'm thinking of our athletes who can train longer hours if that is a potential, in order for them to still do their schooling. Yes, I know it's 100% we have to have that recess, but how can you really monitor a recess doing virtual? So I heard you saying a waiver. So coming back to that, flipping back around to the your sample secondary model, do we use this, you said Friday here, asynchronous and synchronous. Do we use that model right now, currently?
That's kind of what we used when we had that virtual Friday for that period of time, I think from about November until right before, well, it's actually spring break time.
Yeah.
We did have that, but what in my mind, restructuring it, have more structure into it, where there's a definite something for the kids doing that day, not just, checking in. They would have assignments, they would have things that are due, but would be an asynchronous piece to have that flexibility, what you're saying, in case students need to do some independent activities. They'd have that flexibility on Fridays to not have to meet face-to-face with the teachers. They would just meet with their academic advisor on Fridays.
Okay, so what about the children right now that are virtual, though? What happens if they need assistance right now? I'm talking about not the program that we're trying to implement, but what about my virtual students right now?
Mm-hmm.
And if they need help and they're reaching out and they're asking for help, what are those options right now as we stand?
So usually what happens, a lot of they'll contact me for help, and I usually facilitate that with the building. I'll either contact the teacher, contact the principal, and facilitate depending on what kind of help they need, whether they need help with tech stuff. I usually can handle most of those items. If they need help with the teacher, I'll contact the teacher or have the principal facilitate that, and we'll get them whatever support they need with academics, technology, those types of things.
As well as social emotional support as well. I believe our counselors are, doing groups as well.
Okay, what about, so we've talked to the principals, awesome. What about the counselors? I mean, do the counselors not still make our schedules? I thought the counselors did our schedules. Am I wrong? So have we brought them into the conversation? Because I have to be honest, I don't see band lining up with this virtual sample right now. Not that we can't make it, it's just the way I'm seeing it, knowing what we've done this year, projecting for the future, there's a bump.
Well, that's one reason I'd like to have a counselor for the virtual group, just so they can, take the stress off of the building counselors as far as scheduling, especially with our secondary schools. And that way we can make things work. And if we have, depends on what option we go with. If we go with option one and we're kind of housing it here, we can be flexible and make those things work for students. I have children here too. I wouldn't want my children not to take everything they want. So I'm all for working with the kids, working with families to make sure we get it to work for them.
And let me add, we want to do, board members, we want to try to create a sustainable virtual learning program. We know that enrollment is down. This could, if we do it right, this could be a program that can attract students back to North Little Rock. We have some students here that reside in North Little Rock that are going to school up Northwest Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that we're looking at this in the way that we can grow, but we're trying to sustain it. We want to be able to use this option to bring some of our students back. And we're not going to be perfect, but this is where it's just going to allow us to gather more data. What we asked tonight is the approval just to be able to submit it. And Desi is already, Ms. Kaufman has already assured me, she said, Dr. McGee, we know that school districts got to make changes based off the enrollment data. We just need you to get it uploaded, get it improved, and then as the data comes in, the enrollment, then you can make the changes to your application from there.
And what about the concurrent college credits? The secondary, are they going to be available for that for virtual?
Yeah, we would work with them just like we have this year. We've had that available, and we can work with that. That's for me, that's one of the easy things because it is a college class, so it's a little bit more flexible to do those kind of things, yes.
Okay, you spoke also of a committee. Who's on the committee for this?
Well, I've been meeting, it started out with myself, Dr. White, our Executive Director of Secondary, Lori Smith, the Elementary Director, Leanne Alexander, Special Education, Maria Touchstone, ESL. Then independently, I have gone and met with teachers in the buildings, gathering their feedback as well, brought that back to the committee. And then we've also gotten input from Mr. Staggers with the technology. So we've done those kind of meetings. I had formal meetings with the schools myself and then brought that back to the district committee.
Okay, and then last question, sorry.
That's okay.
I got questions. So option one, what is the current curriculum? What are we using? What will
We base
use?
it off our state standards. You know, we have the Arkansas state standards, and so we base our instruction and those types of things off of what is required for the state. Now, the elementary schools have different types of curriculums they use for the reading and the math type of things that they've purchased from an outside vendor.
Board members, we want to be transparent with the board and with our community. We know that we got some concerns with our curriculum. We got to do a curriculum audit. We've been trying to get this audit done, and we're trying to, that is one of the tasks that we're going to try to get done here this summer. We know we have some work to do. However, that's one reason why we need to take into consideration to give us the flexibility to see which option, because outsourcing it may be the best option for us, because number one, it's going to take the stress and the strain off of the building principals and the teachers, but it also makes sure that we have a vital, guaranteed vital curriculum that's going to be there for virtual students as well. So we know that we have some things that we got to improve in, and curriculum is one area that we got to improve.
Ms. West?
Okay, I'm gonna try to make mine into a twofold. As far, going back to where you were talking about, like the enrollment criteria, as far as, what measure would be put in place, or what are you envisioning as, to make sure that students, I mean, you know, it can start off kind of good and then you may lose momentum, but what measure will be put in place to make sure that students are still staying on track, and then also that parents are still held accountable for their child?
And I make sure we put this in the big weekly board report this week, so I upload that criteria so that you can see it. But when you look at it, it is a criteria that the parents would measure. The parents has a support on a part they got to do on the virtual learning program, and their piece, then they have to sign it and commit to it. The engagement is the first thing we're going to look at. If the student is engaged, is fully engaged, and we're not saying just being on the call with the camera off. We're talking about that the camera's on and they're answering questions, that they are participating just like we are now through the conversation. Number two, we got to make sure that the teachers are actively prepared and engaging the students with questionings, and making sure that number three, the assessment of those virtual students, and that the assignments are not only being assessed by the teachers, but also by the parents as well as the students. So we can determine if they are growing. Here, listen, we know that this year was a loss. Let's just be honest, and we have to be transparent. We know that this was an unusual year. None of us across the whole world was prepared to do this right now. But now, this year, we believe that we can create a sustainable, effective teaching and learning virtual, that we can, if Keith McGee is not starting off doing well and end up he's not engaging, that's why we're going to talk about the parent meeting, the engagement, and hold those parent conferences when the teacher know that Keith is slipping.
Okay. That's good, because not that Angela's kids have ever done this, or, you know, but I have seen where students, you wake up and then you go, okay, 15 absences, like, how did you do that? Like,
Correct.
how did your mom not know you were absent 15 days, or your dad, or whatever? So I just want to make sure it's not a measure in place. I mean, that it is a measure in place that they don't get to 12 days and then it's like, uh-oh, we got a problem here.
I just wanted to
Because
add
12
to-
days is really generous.
Sure, and I think that's an advantage of going with a outside provider. Many of these outside platforms have built-in data analytics on the back end that's monitoring how many times does a child log in, how many questions. I mean, there's almost so much data there,
Right.
it's almost overwhelming. And many of these platforms have built-in mentors that are assigned to students. So it's not only the regular classroom teacher, but they are, the research has shown somebody constantly checking in on that child periodically adds to the success rate of in a virtual environment. So those are just two examples of not only monitoring, but how built-in support is provided.
Ms. West, is that it? I believe everybody has spoken. I'll entertain the motion.
Well, before there's a motion, I want to make sure what direction we're going. I started with that question. because we seem to have two different options. We already have virtual, so that's not changing anything by you all accepting applications. What I would like to see, just as a board member, is Superintendent, your recommendation.
Sure, thank you.
Once you do the research, you bring back recommendations, and hopefully not two options, because probably on this group, you probably would need 7 options.
Well, the option is really the delivery option. So what we're seeking tonight is approval that the school system offer a virtual experience, learning experience for our students. How we deliver that is we're in this discussion of, are we going to do a homegrown model like what we've kind of experienced now, or are we going to deliver it in an outside provider environment? And
Good.
so my recommendation is to allow this as an option for families.
And you're going to bring back your recommendation on which option?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. We're just seeking your
I'm fine
approval
with it.
because of the timeline, and then we were going to come back with the delivery option and spell all that out to you. We're going to give you all the data. We're going to show you how many students are enrolled that have signed up, what's the program look like, what's the platform look like, how we're going to support parents, and really to the public, what's that option look like? If it was today, I would recommend we outsource it, but we want to do the due diligence of doing our homework to make sure that's the best option for North Little Rock families, and really to be able to implement it at a very high level. We want this to be successful for some, it is an option for families.
Or will we make that decision, or will that be made by you?
Correct. Correct. That's within the superintendent's purview of delivering instruction. What we're seeking is, my understanding is that the state is requiring that the board approve or not approve of us delivering a virtual option to our families for this upcoming school year. Do I got that correct, Dr. McGee?
That is correct.
Madam President, I move that we provide a virtual option of education to our students in the North Little Rock School District.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded that we provide a Virtual Learning Academy Program 2.0. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It's been adopted. Before we adjourn, the floor Ms. Wonkum, take it over.
Last week, Ms. Rhonda, you did not go unrecognized, and so we just want to present a small token of appreciation from we, the board members, except one, and just know that we love you, we appreciate you, and we cannot sit here without our printouts and our pen and our drinks and our dinner. Thank you so much for dinner, because after 8 hours, we get a little testy and hungry, right, sir? Okay.
Absolutely.
So thank you. So we appreciate you, and we understand we're a little late, but just know that we love you, and it wouldn't be North Little Rock tradition if we weren't just a few days late, right? So thank you, Ms. Rhonda. We appreciate you.
All right, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
May I,
Sure.
number one, I just want to thank the board members for your support for a virtual option. I would be remiss before we close. I want to recognize our colleague, Dr. Keith McGee, for being promoted to Deputy Superintendent of the Little Rock School District. And I'm very proud of him. I'm gonna miss him dearly. I know that he's just a stone's throw away over across the river, but know that you're going to be deeply missed, Dr. McGee. And as I said in the press release, our school system's a better place because of your leadership during some very challenging times. And you got the school system off to the right start this year, and you're ever grateful here in North Little Rock. And please know that the door is always welcome here in North Little Rock. And I'll have a separate conversation with Mr. Poor about cherry picking top talent in my school system.
Well, Madam President, members of the board, if I may address the board, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and to our parents and to our public who's watching and viewing. Thank you for allowing me to serve as the Executive Director for Secondary Education, Assistant Superintendent, and Interim Superintendent. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. I also want to thank the previous administration, Mr. Ackland, for hiring me and making a recommendation to the board. And I want to thank you, board, for just voting me, allowing me to come to serve. I've had a wonderful time and wonderful experience here in North Little Rock. North Little Rock is very, very special to keep. I want to make that clear. Very special to keep. And I will tell you that it was a very difficult choice to return home. But I will tell you that my relationship with Dr. Paluski is beyond superintendent to subordinate to insubordinate to supervisor. We have become very deeply good friends. And it moves me that North Little Rock is in good hands with Superintendent Paluski. He's going to do some great things, and if I could charge you with anything, I would charge you to get behind and support Dr. Paluski. We have a lot of work to do, and you have a short period of time to get it done. And I hate to say it like that, but there's a lot of work. And I can tell you that we come to work even right now. It's nonstop, and I get here at 7 o'clock every day. Thank you. So, again, thank you for allowing me to serve. I wish you I would be in and out. I'm going to do my best to make this a smooth transition. I'm going to work with Dr. Paluski as he continues to select and name the next assistant superintendent to make sure that we can be successful in knowing that this, and make sure that that person is off and running as well. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful, 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 restful summer and year.
Thanks for your service, Dr.
Madam President,
You're still in trouble.
if I may, I want to thank you, Dr. McGee, for the leadership that you've shown. And I want you to know that a lot of people, especially around this district, around this city, know the fact that you went to sleep one night and woke up over one of the largest school districts in this state. Not only that, right in the midst, the most difficult time of a pandemic, where teachers didn't know which direction they were going, students didn't know which direction they were going, and you showed great leadership through all of that to keep us going in the right direction. And for that, we really thank you. And it showed a lot of character, certainly of no surprise to me, that how you continued that leadership and the partnership that you have with our current superintendent. So we thank you. We'll miss you. Certainly our loss is their gain. And we're still going to beat Parkview next year.
I will say one thing, and I will be done, Madam President, members of the board. I cannot thank my family enough. My wife, my sons. Spend a lot of time away from them. I am grateful because they have been my rock. And I want to publicly thank my family. So again, I want to thank all of my work family here in North Little Rock that I've done and I met. The working relationship has blossomed to friendship, and I just, again, just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
Motion?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Third? Fourth?